Hello and welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast, man. It's Christmas Eve. We're in the holiday spirit. Sean, how you doing, brother?
Not bad. I'm joining Doc Rivers in the number one fan club for Tyler Johnson, so I'm chilling.
Yeah, I don't know, man. What he was in the final, like had to get a stop possession last night defensively.
Yeah,
Tyler Johnson's on the floor in his first
defensive
game with the
doctor.
Sixers. Yeah. He looked all right. He looked like he was he's a hustler, he's a guy that gets around, but the Sixers lose to the Hawks last night, which wasn't fun. What did you take away from that game?
Yeah, the JV Hawks without everybody, without Trey Young, Kevin Herter, basically the entire anybody that's pretty much playable except for John Collins and Cam Reddish. It was not there.
Yeah.
We saw Lance Stevenson getting buckets on the Sixers.
DeLon
Uh,
Wright.
DeLon, right? Yeah. So not a great win or not a great loss at all. And it is definitely like to me a mentality thing as far as like they didn't show up from start to finish. Like they were down 15 in the first quarter so quick, and it felt like a game that they just took lightly. They sleptwalked through, and that frankly they're not a good enough team to be able to doing that. Like they're a team that has to show up and compete every day, and they just didn't last night, which is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, and it's like you're not in a position to like lose those games. Like
Right.
those are really, especially right now, like when you're getting kind of like freebies or getting opportunities to beat a team that's shorthanded, it's really disappointing to watch them just like not only lose that game, but also just like hardly put up points. Didn't look like they had any sort of plan. Just kind of waltzed in and thought it was going to be sweet, and then it wasn't. So yeah, it was very frustrating. And I mean, how much of that? And Doc Rivers after the game said, we approach this game too casually. And to me, that seems like something that the coach should be like, yeah, that was my fault, rather than just saying that the players did everything wrong. I don't know, man. Every time he speaks, it feels like I'm a little bit more out on him. What did you just see? Like, how did you feel about him specifically, and how much of blame do you think falls on him for like games like this?
I just feel like Doc's kind of over it. Like I think he's kind of sick of like he just feels I feel like he's just miserable in his role and
Yeah,
I get it's not fun like with the team as it is right now. Like this year's just been so weird overall with everything going on with the Simmons stuff with everything. But I don't feel like he's a guy that's like motivated to come in and love his job every day anymore. And that's very important as a head coach for the amount of hours that you have to put in and the like just all the things that you do, the communication you have, the what you how you interact with players like your personality and your like mindset is so crucial to like conveying what you're trying to like build a team on. And I feel like this team is very much catered to Doc Rivers as far as like the type of players when we talk about like the having the true big men, the Andre Drummonds, the Charles Bassies, the stuff like that. I definitely think Tyler Johnson is a guy that he had some say in signing, and I like Tyler Johnson. I'm not going to throw too much on it, but like it feels very catered to Doc, and I don't think Doc has the same kind of commitment. And I mean, he's fine. Like at the end of the day, I don't think if Phil Jackson was coaching, like the Sixers still wouldn't be a phenomenal team this year.
yeah,
But it is frustrating. I definitely feel like even the interactions with the media, like he just feels miserable. It's always like every question is like, how could you even ask me? It's like, dog, these are real questions. Like these, you should have to answer this. Like I was listening to
yeah,
the interview last night and the post game last night, and he's like, Kyle Newbeck asked like, why did Tyrese Maxey come off the bench? And it was just like an immediate like, well, he only had 1 day of practice, so I'm not gonna just throw him back in the starting line. It's like that's a fair question to ask you, man. Like, chill out.
yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of just Doc kind of a little bit miserable in his time. He seems to be getting a little past it, and I hate to see it. Hopefully, he kind of has a wake up when this roster turns around and can find some passion again. But I've been disappointed in it.
Yeah, and like a question like that, why did Tyrese Maxey come off the bench? And then he comes in and immediately has like I think what he had, like 8, 9 points straight like
Yeah,
in a little
5 over on
stretch.
the end. Yeah,
Like why did he come off the bench? The question is pretty simple. Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. It's like it just seems like he's above all of this stuff. Like he feels like he's above all of this stuff. And it's like you're not. Like you're a head coach in this city. You're gonna get asked questions. Your team's underperforming. Um, and, like, you can talk about the injuries, you can talk about COVID, you can talk about all this shit, but everyone is dealing with that. Like, you're playing teams
right.
that are in a worse situation than you,
The
and you're
Hawks,
still, like
especially. Yeah,
and, like, really, I think every time the Sixers play the Hawks, I think it becomes more evident that Nate McMillan is just a better NBA basketball coach in today's age than Doc Rivers, and last night proved it again. Like, how do you come in there with guys that, like who's I don't even remember, the one guy's name, the guy that started for the Hawks is number 4. I forget his name. I'd never heard of him before, and, like, I don't wanna
that's
toot my
not
own horn or anything. I'm, like, fairly well-rounded with this. I know a lot of NBA basketball players. I feel like you do too, and when there's an actual guy in a starting lineup for a team that I had to look him up and see where he went to college and try to figure all this stuff out. And like when my mom is asking me who these players are, and I'm like, actually, I don't know. Like, you should beat that team. You should beat that team. And I don't know how like they go through this all the time. And kind of we've talked about it before. You've definitely mentioned it before. Like they get down so early and then they have to try to fight back. And it's like that is a fundamental like philosophical problem with a team. When you every single game, it's like, okay, the second half, we're gonna have to try to come back and win this game. And then you get in games like this where, okay, you had a chance to tie the game and Embiid had a good open shot at the end of the game. Unfortunately, missed it, but that's the way it goes. Like when you put your players in a position where you have to make a last second jumper to hopefully tie the game just to go into overtime with a really short-handed team, like that's the result that you get. So I don't know, man. I'm just disgusted with Doc. I think everything he does is just very questionable, I think, on a lot of fronts. So I don't know, man. It's not fun to watch right now.
Yeah, and if it was number 4 you were talking about, was it Skylar Mays?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alright, well, I am a big Skylar Mays guy, so I'm not
Okay, there
taking
you
the
go.
Skylar Mays slander. Coming out of LSU, he was a draft guy of mine, but, he played well last night. There were a lot of Hawks that and this is another, like, frustrating part, like, these are all guys, like, jumping at the chance to, like, these are extra
Yeah,
minutes, like, I'm thrilled with it, like, I'm gonna put my all out there, and you just don't kinda see that same reaction with the Sixers, like, Maxey was the only guy without Maxey last night, and he's missed the last 2, like, his burst of energy is so necessary to this team, and so, like, it changed it the second he came in last night. Like, it went from, like,
yeah,
us sleepwalking through the motions to at least we had some, like, zest, some, like,
yeah.
go for it,
Something.
some something, and, like, it's as great as I love Maxey and as great as it is, like, it shouldn't require that every night. Like, guys should be able to step up without that, like, burst and without
Yeah,
and for we're just relying on him so heavily as, like, a 21-year-old kid that it's like, he's great. He cannot be the guy that we're expecting to bring it to at a extreme level every single night. Like, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry. Like Seth Curry scored the first 5 points of the game and then didn't shoot for the rest of the half. It's like, what are we doing here? And he came
yeah,
alive a little bit late again, but it's just like you're a great shooter. Go find your shots, man. He
yeah,
there were a ton of looks last night. There was a streak where it was just kind of a repeat, like drive and dish out, drive and dish out, drive and dish
yeah,
out. We passed up so many open looks and so many
yes.
like shots that just were fine shots, like somewhat open threes and open threes we're passing out for to drive right back in the mix and then kick it out and run the same thing all over again. It was just a cyclical and frustrating cycle. So I don't know.
Yeah, I literally, like, there were so many times, I feel like it was especially in the first half, but it definitely happened in the second too, like, where Maxey caught an open jumper, drove in, kicked it to Tobias. Tobias passed up an open jumper, drive in, passed to Furkan. Furkan passes up a jumper because he can't shoot anymore. And then their only goal really is to get the ball to Embiid, which, like, again, we all understand how dominant Embiid is. We all understand how important he is to this offense, but he can't. It's time to realize like teams are just going to make it impossible for him to dominate. They're just going to
Mhm.
do everything they possibly can. And like he ends up with what, 23 points. Good night from Embiid, solid night, I guess. But like when you need more than 25 a night from him just to win, like we're really creeping back into that territory of like you live and die by Joel, and when the other team is dead set on stopping him as a post up scorer, like it's much easier to stop a post up scorer. You just double him, you make him pass it out when no one else is a threat. You're not worried about it, and you can just sit into a zone because they don't shoot well enough or enough in general to break a zone, and they don't know what they're doing. And it's like to me, again, that falls on coaching. To me, it falls on like a great leader like Tobias that we've all talked about. He's got to figure it out. Like he started the game 0 of 5 from three. Like
Mhm.
just not good enough, man. It's just not good enough. They're missing a lot of things, and it's funny to now see like maybe this is a little bit of a generalization, but I feel like a lot of people are starting to turn back. Like I saw like 3 or 4 tweets last night that are like, "This team could really use Ben Simmons." It's like, no shit. Where have
Yeah.
you guys been? Like, did you really think this team was going to be all right without him?
I think a lot of people did, and I will say I thought they were going to be more all right than they've shown to be. Like, it's Ben Simmons is not a motor guy. Like, I don't think he was a guy that improved the motor of this team, and that's been the most disappointing part to me. Like, I didn't expect there to be nights where they just don't show up, like last night was in the way, and I don't think that's correlated to Simmons. I think that's this team issue and that. But with that being said, there's absolutely like the athleticism, the defensive intensity, things like that, the passing ability. Those we absolutely miss from Ben Simmons. So I guess we've known from the start, and I think everybody's known like as this team's currently constructed, is not built for a championship. Like, we're just missing a $33 million gap in our salary where we don't
Yeah.
have Ben Simmons. We have nothing to replace him. We literally have just a zero in that category. So it's pretty clear like this wasn't a completed team. The most frustrating part to me has absolutely been the mentality and just kind of the casualness that they take games. So I don't think that's a Simmons issue. I think that's a this team issue. But for sure, we could use Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, and this is something we can talk about more extensively in next week or something. But like Doc recently said, I talked to Ben um, briefly or something. He said that yesterday that he recently spoke to Ben Simmons. Do you think that do you really think he's the problem? Like I honestly am starting to believe that like Doc Rivers has been more of the problem in terms of Ben not wanting to come back than anything else. And like now we're seeing the flaws of what Doc Rivers is.
I think partially. I think Doc
Yeah.
definitely has absolutely played a major role in him not wanting to come back. But I think it's definitely a bigger conversation than that. Like when we think, I think like feelings are definitely hurt. Bridges are
Yeah.
burnt. Like I don't see that there any way that Simmons comes back and plays for this Sixers team as long as Morey pushes it out. Like I just can't wrap my mind around it. I feel like we're too
Yeah.
far gone in that. And I mean, from Doc's perspective, and I will say this to defend him, it really sounded like, as much as Doc, it was ridiculous last year how much he defended Ben publicly, and every single question that was critical of Ben or his shooting, he was over the top with, well, look at his defense, look at his passing, and all things that are true, but it's like let's call it what it is. But
Yeah.
it sounds like behind the scenes, like Doc really did not like Ben, and Ben really did not like Doc. And to me, if I'm Ben Simmons, I would be so much more appreciative of, this is a guy that we don't really get along, and he's defending me to this extent. And then Doc totally slipped up at the end of the year with the, I don't know if he's a championship point guard, but that's not enough to me to like, I'm never speaking to this guy again. I'm never
Yeah.
playing for this organization. Like, at the end of the day, as much as like the Sixers have not done enough to Ben Simmons and have not treated him poor enough for it to deserve this kind of like, I'm so over this. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, this is a Ben Simmons issue with having just not the stones, not the guts, not the, I don't know, just the passion to actually. So sure, Doc's a big part, but Ben's got to step up and be a grown man at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, and I feel like that's also a conversation for another day, and it's tough because, like, it seems like that almost becomes, like, the only way out, or the only
Yeah.
thing to talk about. The only other option, is to talk about Ben and after games like this because it was so disappointing, but I don't know, man. They play again on Sunday. I forget who they play. Do you know who they play?
Yeah. Wizards.
The
The
Wizards.
Wizards. Yeah.
So, a struggling team, the Wizards
Mhm.
are, and they get a chance to get back on track. Hopefully, Niang and Drummond and Shake are back, but I mean, are you hopeful going forward, or is this like, are you seeing the clock start to tick a little bit?
I feel the same way. Like, as disappointed as last night was, didn't really change my outlook. Like, they're not a complete team. They're a very mediocre, playing maybe slightly better. As long as Embiid's on the team, like, they always have a chance. But it shouldn't require him to have to go absolutely mongo just for him to win a regular
Yeah,
season game. And so until a trade's done, I don't have a super high hope for this team. But I do think, I guess the struggles in my mind have to have sped up the process of getting a deal done, and I hope that's the case. And if that does, I'll be bought back in. But for now, like, they are what they are. They're a mediocre playing team.
yeah, absolutely. Which sucks to that conclusion we're kind of coming to as of right now. I feel like at first we were kind of still hopeful they might be good, and seems like they're just really not that good, and that's a really disappointing end to meet. But that's where we are right now. Obviously, there's still a lot of things that are incoming. Um, if you have anything else, we can talk about your interview that you did before we segue into that.
Yeah, we're gonna finish this with an interview with Justin Persicketti from the Painted Lines, and talk a lot of Blue Coats, which is at this point the most exciting basketball team in the Philadelphia area. So tune in for that. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, man. Should be exciting. Should be a lot of fun. We appreciate it and enjoy the interview.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. James is out today negotiating a 10-day contract with an unnamed NBA team right now. But I'm here with my guy, Justin Persicketti, who is the #1 Blue Coats reporter in the world. So, Justin, how you doing today?
Oh, damn. I didn't expect that. I will be honest. I'll say that. And I appreciate it, but that's definitely not true. I think I'd still give that to my guy, Jason Blevins, who did it for a long time. So I think I'll still give it to him. But I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How you doing today?
Doing good. Happy to talk some Blue Coats. Talk about the most exciting basketball team in the Philadelphia area right now. So to jump right into it, Blue Coats coming off the Winter Showcase Championship and an all-around great season so far. So Justin, tell me about last night, the season so far, and let's talk some Blue Coats. What are your opening thoughts?
Oh man, well, the Blue Coats have been surprisingly, and to me at least, surprisingly like as good as they've been. I think they've lost one game all season,
Hmm.
and so mind you, they've only played like 15 games at this point, but that's still pretty impressive. All things considered, the amount of guys that they've lost throughout the season to either COVID, either being called up to another team. I think they lost Charlie Brown. They lost Shaq Harrison to call up to 10-day contracts. Shamari Pons, who is their point guard, who they drafted number 1 overall in the G League draft, got COVID last week. Then you also have Jaden Springer, Aaron Henry, Paul Reed, and Charles Bazzi, who have been up and down
Hmm.
from the Sixers. So it's like even with all of that, somehow they've been able to keep it together. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to cover, and it's been a fun season so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what's impressed me the most too. Even looking at the showcase win, like these guys started out the first game, they had the full squad there with Miles Powell, Aaron Henry, and B-Ball Paul all playing. And then right after the game, they're off on a private jet to join the Sixers. The Sixers are shorthanded. And then
Yep.
still with that, the team keeps fighting, guys stepping up. Like you said, Charlie Brown getting a 10-day deal, Shaq Harrison getting a 10-day deal. But they really do play a fun style of basketball and are a team that's a blast to watch. I mean, defensively, I've been blown away with the things they've done and the way they lock down and the way they get out and run, set up 3-pointers, and it's just an all around fun style of basketball. And frankly, I've been super impressed with what they're building there, and the talent level is really getting there. So cool to see you guys be able to plug and play. And are there any guys in particular that really caught your eye?
Jaron Cumberland has been a guy that has really caught my eye over the last few days, I should say, at least
Hmm.
in the showcase tournament. Overall, I would say before Shaq Harrison got pulled up, Shaq Harrison was looking really good.
For sure.
Springer had some moments. Trying to think, Paul Reed really wasn't down there as long as people may think.
Hmm.
When he was, though, he was obviously did what he typically has done in the G League in MVP form. But I guess I'll focus on a guy who's been there the whole time, and that's Jaron Cumberland. 3-point shots. He didn't average the best 3-point percentage, but it looks good when he's getting the opportunities. He averaged 7 assists during the showcase tournament, which I thought was ridiculous. On top of the fact that he had his first career triple double during the showcase tournament, and and won MVP of the championship game, which was last night, and now just got named to the all showcase team, which had guys like DJ Wilson was on there, I believe, and I'm not sure who else, but I know he was there. So it was just he really impressed me in all. Like he gets to the basket, gets to the line, has a quick trigger on his pull up threes, and just in general, just was smart with the basketball most of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And he's been a guy that kind of has stepped up in the absence and really hasn't taken any time at point guard throughout the year. And like you said, with
Yeah,
Pons out, with Shaq Harrison getting called up, he kind of stepped into those shoes. And you could tell he was like feeling himself through this winter showcase thing. There's a play in last night's championship where it was like the coming from out of bounds play where he just kind of like barely shot the three, like it barely touched his fingers, and that thing was still nothing but net. And
yeah.
those were definitely cool to watch. Happy to get him some recognition, a guy who really has flown under the radar. He had some pedigree coming out of Cincinnati, ACC Player of the Year, but really, I think these past couple of days has been his best chance to kind of launch, and especially given like the COVID concerns around the NBA, I bet he's a guy that a lot of teams are taking a hard look at right now. So super happy for Jaron and a guy that really seems like a genuine dude, good, and I've been thrilled to see him succeeding on the court. To dive into some more kind of Sixer specific,
Yeah.
uh, B-ball Paul's been a little up and down, but for me personally, he's a fan favorite of mine. He's one of my favorite players to watch. So, what do you see from him, the Blue Coats, and what kind of do you see? How do you see that like translating to the NBA?
Yeah, and this is something that's been tough for me even since last year. So last year he was a rookie, obviously in the league. Got his NBA contract between last year and this year, and he looked so good in the G League last year, like so
Hmm.
good. One MVP, one Rookie of the Year in the G League. Was on every like G League team you could imagine, all defensive, all G League team, like just insanely good. averaging 20, 10 plus rebounds, plus assists, shooting 44% from three, 50% from the field. Like the guy was just all over the place, but he played center in the G League.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they played him very similarly to how they played Joel Embiid. Lots of isolations, lots of when in transition, pulling up for 3-point shots behind the offense when they're already up the court. Like just very similar to how you see Joel Embiid play. And so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's a center probably. He's probably a small ball center, probably a guy that could get thrown out there with Ben Simmons lineups eventually at some point. Season goes along, G League season ends, playoffs come along for the Sixers, but even before playoffs, when the G League ends and they get thrown into the NBA roster, the G League players, I mean, didn't get barely any time to play at center. I was kind of shocked by that. Doc was trying to have him play at the 4, and it just didn't seem to work all that well. And he tried him at the 5 even now, and it seems to not work that well. It's a very hard. He's a very hard player to look at and be like, okay, what are you going to be in the NBA? Because in the G League, when he's getting the high level of minutes and high opportunity of shooting, he is converting. He's doing really well. When he gets to the NBA, he doesn't get a lot of time on the court. He's a high energy player. He fouls people. It's just going to happen. Also in the fact that he's really not that big either. Like he's not that big for a guy who plays center in the G League. He's 6'9", 6'10", probably with shoes on. He's a very skinny dude. And just when it comes to the NBA, trying to body up against most of the big men there, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time when you're that small. And that's the biggest thing I've noticed in his transition, trying to work his way into the NBA, is the size being an issue for what his skill set really is. He's very skillful down around the rim, skillful with getting offensive rebounds, skillful with working his way and getting around, like slipping inside to get around bodies to get into the reverse layup. He loves that move, but he can't seem to get very good positioning in the NBA at this point. So So to answer your question, for me, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what he is. My thought was that he was going to be a center, but that hasn't panned out at this point. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very unique skill set that Paul has. Like you said, it's tough to kind of box him into anything. And personally, the more I watch him, I do really believe that there's something there with just the energy, the impact, the things that he brings to the table. And there's definitely categories that he struggles. And you brought up a lot there. The strength, I think, is the biggest thing to me. He's a little bit, not that he's undersized for center, because 6'9", 6'10" in today's day and age, I do think is enough. But he is pretty easy to push. He has a tough time getting down in the post, tough time creating separation through strength, which are all things that are important when it comes to playing big man basketball. The thing that I guess that appeals to most to me about him is when we think about playoff basketball and how important it comes. We've seen the same story with the Sixers for a year with the on-off splits with Joel Embiid, with just how killer it is. And I just have a fundamental issue with the thought process of just when we look at a backup center, we're just kind of getting a worse Joel Embiid, the plug and play. And Drummond has been an upgrade over Dwight Howard, absolutely, but he's still to the same extent is pretty much playing Joel Embiid in a worse role, especially on the defensive end. And the thing that really appeals to me about Paul is he does have something different when we talk about the mobility, the switchability. He's a guy that I trust out on the perimeter far more than Drummond, and honestly, arguably more than Embiid when we're talking about matching up with a guard, just with kind of the quickness of pace. And he does have tendencies to foul, which are an issue. Yeah. But it has been frustrating me, just kind of the lack of commitment on the Sixers end to developing Paul and showing him, because we see what he can do in the G League when he's getting these max minutes. But the things that I see that he struggles with is just kind of a plug and play, being a complementary piece and being this. So I would much rather him be getting committed to limited minutes per game with the Sixers than playing an extended role with the Blue Coats at this point, just because of we know what he can do when he's the man. He's still figuring out how to be a complementary piece. So do you think that's something that's just with time it'll come, or it's just translating, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's something that with time could come, but I think another thing I think about is, are the Sixers willing to give him that time in the window that they're trying to create? Right. So, and the reason I say that is they need guys who are going to perform now in the roles that they want them to perform in. And you notice Doc has thrown him in there at times, and when Doc has thrown Reed in there, at least this season, Reed hasn't done too well. Especially when it comes to what's the word I'm looking, spacing the floor. He just, for some reason, as soon as he gets to the NBA, and maybe it's because he's coming cold off the bench, it wouldn't shock me if that was the reason.
Yeah.
But he just can't get his 3-point shooting figured out when he's coming off the bench, at least in the short minutes he's gotten so far this season that I've noticed with the Sixers. When he's with the Blue Coats, he's fine, but he's also getting like 30 to damn near 40 minutes per game. Right. So it's like, you're going to have an easier time with that. And I think that's a big reason why he's not getting the minutes that I think people foresaw him possibly getting, because he shot 44% from the field, from behind the arc last season in the bubble. And so a lot of fans were like, oh my God, this guy not only is averaging 20 points and 13 rebounds, or however many rebounds he was averaging playing center, he's also shooting 44% from three. This guy is exactly what we need off the bench. And part of it, I think, is not getting the opportunity for extended minutes. But I think the other part is that in the short minutes he gets, he's not really showing a lot for Doc to want to play him more. It's the same thing. You look at Doc's done it a lot, honestly, with the young players. He did it last year with Tyrese Maxey in a lot of ways. He did it last year with oh my goodness. Oh wow.
Isaiah Joe.
Yes, he's done it with Isaiah Joe, where like Joe has to be shooting basically like 100% from the field for him to stay in games. It's just, if you're not playing well, it seems, in Doc's system as a young guy, you're not going to keep playing.
Yeah, Doc definitely has a short trigger with the young guys. I do think Paul has some potential to be kind of a 4 if he can learn it. And I mean, there were moments this year, like he got a couple starts alongside the starters this year, which I was super thrilled about. And I mean, I still think the potential's there. I'm all about it. But to transition a little to another guy that I've come to really like, Aaron Henry, two-way guy out of Michigan State. He played some significant minutes against the Celtics the other day. Looked great defending Tatum. What have you seen from Aaron Henry so far? We saw him in person the other day in the Blue Coats game. So what are your thoughts on Henry?
Yeah, Henry, actually, it's funny because I thought he was going to have like a much larger role on the Blue Coats team coming into the season, but they seem to really want to focus on Springer and Shaq Harrison and guys like that. Obviously, Henry's a two-way guy. He's gonna get his minutes, and he's gonna get opportunities to grow as a player because they obviously see something in him if they're gonna sign him to a two-way contract. But he hasn't he's not been the guy who's scoring all the points. He hasn't been the guy who is averaging the most steals on the team. Like, he's kind of just been a good like complementary piece to like when Shaq Harrison was there, when Jaden Springer was playing with the Blue Coats as well. Obviously, you notice Aaron Henry's athleticism. That's one of the things he was kind of known for in college. His defense is pretty good. He's able to stay in front of guys, and he's aggressive with his hands. Something I noticed, and I noticed this actually in the game against Boston. He got blocked by Romeo Langford. He went into the paint and tried to do like a quick hop step into a floater, right? Like probably like between like 5 and 10 feet from the basket, and he just got swatted basically.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I saw that and I'm like, to me, like that must be like a wake up moment for him going to the NBA, having an opportunity in the NBA, because with the Blue Coats, that's a move he consistently goes to. It's like, then you get to the NBA, it's like guys are a little more athletic, guys are a little longer. You're going to have a harder time getting shots off like that. But I think overall, something I've liked that I've seen out of him is that he has games where he has shown that he can be a good 3-point shooter, or at least a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He looks good in the corner, hits a lot of corner threes. Other than that, it's hard to say much. Like I said, he's not a guy that's been really popped out from on the page for me yet. I like what I see out of him, but I haven't seen any like super big moments yet. And I do think some of that has to do with opportunity, because as soon as Shaq Harrison got hurt and Jaden Springer wasn't with the team, they kind of just focused on Paul Reed a lot and getting him the ball.
Yeah.
So I think that, to me, he just hasn't got a lot of opportunity to pop out there.
Gotcha. The thing that appeals to me about Aaron Henry, when we
Yeah.
just talk about Paul Reed, the struggle with him is kind of putting him in a box and figuring out exactly what he is. I think
Mhm.
Henry is in the process of like putting himself in the box in the same way that we've seen with so many kind of 3-and-D role players, same with like Danny
Yeah.
Green, all these guys. I think he's really trying to work at just maximizing what he's good at, and that is just playing hard perimeter defense, hitting
Mhm.
three-pointers, and kind of cutting the fluff out of the game. So I think mindset wise, I'm very happy with where he is as far as like his identity as a professional and what he can be. And if I
Mhm.
really do think he can be like a contributing role player in that kind of role. Like I said, the defense on Tatum, I was very impressed with. He was in his grill, wasn't intimidated by the moment at all. That
Yeah.
block by Romeo Langford, and Langford took a hard spill after that block too, by the way. Went flat down, so rough break
Yeah.
for him there. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a kind of a welcome to the NBA moment. I buy into the hard nosed defense like that.
Yeah.
When we look at this Blue Coats team, and same, we'll get to Springer in a second, but same with him. Like if you have that NBA level defense, there's enough for me to kind of buy in and believe that the rest will come. And for Henry, that is just continuing to shoot threes, continuing to become a better perimeter player. And like, I believe in that. I also, a thing I've noticed with watching him is he seems very vocal on the court, which is a huge plus.
Mhm.
Like you see him talking to guys, especially Paul Reed. I always see him in Paul Reed's ear, kind of pointing,
Oh, yeah.
trying to point out, which that's awesome. And if you're a coach, like that's definitely something you should take note of. So I do have faith in Henry, and I think that when it comes down to it, like he could check the box as a role player. I don't want to brush over Shaq Harrison because he's been one of my favorite guys. He's
Oh, yeah.
obviously not with the team with a 10-day contract with the Nets right now.
Yeah.
Could come back depending on how things shake out, but we'll see. I've been impressed with him through the summer league and just everything. So tell me a little bit on what your thoughts on Shaq.
Dude, Shaq, I think I told you this before. Shaq was my favorite guy to watch on this team early in the season. Man was making shots all over the place, high volume. He was shooting the ball a lot, but he was making them more than he was missing from what I could see. And I'm talking mid range jump shots, 3-point shots, off the dribble, going to the rim. Like defensively was just a menace. The guy was averaging 4 point something on steals per game early in the season. It was insane. It
Mm-hmm.
was insane. I was like, how? Like, mind you, I think a lot of people knew already that he was a defensive menace coming, like when he was with Chicago and Denver. Like that's what he was for. Like he was there for defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what though, if that guy can become a good playmaker and become have more of a consistent jumper
Mm-hmm.
from like behind the arc, I think he can legitimately be an NBA at least bench player. Problem for him is he's only 6'3", 6'4", not the biggest dude. And when you are that size, kind of like the same thing like we were talking about Aaron Henry, you need to be able to shoot the ball. Like that's just what teams look for nowadays. If you're going to be on the court, you either need to be Matisse
Mm-hmm.
Thybulle level defense, or you need to be able to shoot the ball and play good defense. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with him, but he's definitely an exciting player to watch.
I'm a huge fan of Harrison's game. We'll see if he's back with the Blue Coats and how that works out. To touch on another Sixers guy, Jaden Springer. I think he's a guy that some Sixers fans have jumped the gun on, being a little bit upset with kind of not the lack of progress, but I guess where he is right now. The thing that obviously sticks out is his defense and just kind of his ability to do that. But beyond that, what have your thoughts on what you've seen from him so far?
Yeah, I honestly I've seen nothing but improvement from him as the season's gone on. While he's been down with the Blue Coats, his shooting's been improved. I think something he's gotten confidence in and is doing a lot of what he did in college, and that was getting to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of punishing people around the rim, and and it's funny because I feel weird saying this, and it's definitely like a extreme comparison for most, and I wouldn't even say he's at this level yet. But to me, he plays very similarly to how Jimmy Butler plays when it comes to getting into people and getting as close to the rim as he can, hitting people with the elbow when he gets up with the ball and hitting it off the backboard right into the basket. And like I see that, that move is like ingrained in my mind from what Jimmy Butler did with the Sixers and
Mm-hmm.
still does with the Heat when he's playing. And so I see a lot of that and a lot of if he gets stopped by a few bodies in the paint, lots of turnaround fadeaways. It's just very Jimmy Butler-esque in what I remember. So I've liked his game. I've genuinely liked it. And I will be honest, in the beginning of the season and when that draft pick first happened, when Cam Thomas
Hmm.
was drafted the pick before Jaden Springer, I was like, are you kidding me? Because Jaden Springer wasn't a guy that was on a lot of people's radars. I mean, he's a young dude. I believe he's only 19, maybe he turned 20 now. I'm not sure, but he's
Yeah.
not an older guy, and he didn't it's not like he was like a 20 plus point scorer in college or anything like that. So he's been a pleasant surprise, not only for Sixers fans, but for me as well.
Yeah, definitely. And he, like you said, very young. He was 18 when they drafted him, just turned 19 not too long ago. So he's
Okay,
still got
yeah.
plenty to go.
Yeah.
For me, he reminds me a lot, and I don't mean this as an insult, but he reminds me of like a football player playing basketball.
Oh no,
Just the way,
it's a fact. It's
yeah,
a
the way
fact.
he attacks, uses his body and the physicality. And that is impressive for a guy so young to have his body the way he is and kind of just built NBA strength already. And like I said, the defense sticks out. If you have defense, like I'm willing to wait for the offense to come. And I mean, this hasn't happened to in the Sixers history very often lately, but I do have faith that Springer will get there. And there definitely have been signs of growth, which is super encouraging. This isn't a guy that we expect to be a contributing player for the Sixers very soon yet. Like this is
Yeah,
still a
no.
guy that's a couple of years down the line, but I do think there's something there. Do you see his best fit moving forward as kind of like a two guard role, or what do you think?
That is so tough. And it's so tough because the two guard role is so different on so many different teams.
True.
Like he's not a Seth Curry. Like
Yeah, absolutely not.
he's not growing into that kind of player. I think on the Sixers, if anything, he would turn more into like the Danny Green type role.
Hmm.
Um, an upgrade comparison to that, like when it comes to getting into the paint and stuff like that. But I don't know. He's different. He's a different mold of player than the Sixers have on their roster right now. Like in
Yeah,
my opinion, like there's not like I genuinely can't think of it. There's tell me a 6'5" guard on the Sixers right now that is primarily scoring in the paint. Like
yeah,
I mean, Tyrese Maxey primarily scores in the paint, but he's also got a super dynamic dribble and it has insane speed. Like, and
hmm,
so a lot of his points are scored just blowing by people. So I don't know. I don't see anybody that's like him. So it's hard to really pinpoint a role for him on the team. Genuinely, when he was drafted, I thought he was gonna be moved. And I still think there
hmm.
is a possibility that he is moved. Whenever the Ben Simmons trade does happen, and it is going to happen at some point, he is not playing with the Sixers. I see that everywhere. Like signs are like, oh, what if Ben Simmons comes back? No, that's not gonna
Yeah,
happen. I do think there is a possibility he could get moved with a trade like that. It wouldn't shock me as a sweetener, as like a guy be like, hey, to whatever team it is, here's a guy that's had 5 steals for 5 steals in 3 different games in a row, and he's got
yeah,
potential. Like he's young, it wouldn't shock me. So
yeah.
I don't know if I have an exact answer for that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's hard, and he's still very young in his career arc, so there's still plenty of development that could happen. I totally agree with that. There's a chance he's moved. I think the thought process behind just the selection of Springer was pretty much just best player available. He was a guy that, even though he is very raw, he was
Mhm.
pretty hyped up going in the draft. There were a lot of top 10 projections on him, and a guy that slipped. So I think that was just more capitalizing on value, taking that and saying we'll figure out whether this is on our team or another team. This is kind of the
Yeah,
best move going forward, which there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, young guy, high potential. Why not?
Yeah. To swing one more, the more recent Sixer signing, Miles Powell, which is just first off an awesome storyline. Just this guy,
Hmm.
local kid, grew up in Trenton, getting to play for his hometown team, and awesome story there. The game you and me got to see, he actually played against the Sixers. Then
Yep.
the next day, inked a two-way deal with the Sixers. So played a game with the Blue Coats, and then 4 days later, he's up there with the real Sixers, which just that's an absolute like awesome storyline to watch. That's the things you root for. But what have you seen from Powell just in an on-court perspective?
See, I'll be honest, it's so hard to like really say that, like tell you what I've seen from an on-court perspective because I saw him play one game, and that's the
Mhm.
first game he's played this season.
Yeah.
So Powell, I think I don't remember when he got the knee injury, but he had a serious knee injury that put him out like most of last season, and then I believe, or maybe not most of last season, but I know he didn't play at all in the beginning of this season until that Friday that with the game you were at with me, and he had an inefficient night. I know that, but he still like scored pretty well. From tape I've watched of him, I could say it based off tape pretty much, and that's it. He is a 3-level scorer. Like the
Yeah.
man can score on each level. Is at least last year with the Knicks when he was in the bubble, he was shooting the lights out of the gym. Like he was shooting like 40 something percent from three, on top of shooting 50 something percent from, or a little under 50% from the field. And you love to see that out of any guard, any 6'2" size player. If they're shooting high percentages from three and in the field, that's all you want out of a scoring guard like that. So I think he does have some potential, but I do think he's also a smaller guy,
Yeah.
which I think it can be a concern when a guy doesn't have a super dynamic ball handling skills. On the NBA level, that can be a concern. You look at guys like Grant Riller, who he was just with the Sixers, who that's the same concern with him at times. Oh man, I'm blanking on some names right now, but it's a concern typically in the NBA. If you can score in the G League, that's amazing, obviously. But when it comes to the NBA, you need to be able to score like super efficiently on as least dribbles as possible, unless you're like a superstar level player when you can dribble the ball as much as you want. Because it's hard. It's hard to score in the NBA. Is pretty much what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Can't
sure.
get the words out.
And for Powell, like, I mean, I think in general, there's a little bit too much made about size, just especially in today's NBA. Positions are so fluid and things like that.
Yeah.
If Powell was a couple inches taller, he probably would have gotten multiple NBA chances already. Like, this is a guy that is a shooter, is a scorer. It's just the fact that he's like 6'1" and like a barely 6'1", it feels. But he
Yeah.
does have like the feel of a guy that just can score, and that is something refreshing on this Sixers roster. He's never scared to pull the trigger. He's got deep range, and like, yeah, I mean, I wish, of course, if he was a couple inches like bigger, it wouldn't be any concern because he's a guy that can kind of just sit out there, be a wing, do that. But it is like, I think what's held him back is he's not particularly good as a passer, can't really rebound, not
Yeah.
a super plus defender. So it's kind of like, it's tough for a 6'1" guy that their only outlet is scoring. But I'm hopeful that Powell can catch fire. He shot 45% from three last year in the G League. He has the pedigree, and he's competing for his NBA life. So I love the storyline. I hope he sticks around, and I think everybody's rooting for Miles Powell.
Oh, me too. And the thing I just found it hilarious that the game we were at, literally Daryl Morey was. I don't know if you said that already. I think you may have, but Daryl Morey was literally sitting watching this game, and 2 days later signs the guy that's on the other
Yeah.
team. I just found that so funny to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I love it. Beyond that, the couple other guys I would just want to mention real quick,
Yeah.
Haywood Highsmith and Braxton Key are two guys that I guess I'm still just rooting for. Braxton Key in particular, I think, is a very unique game. And another
Yeah.
guy that's tough to quite like box in on what he does or where he fits, but I really do like his game. And Haywood Highsmith, I mean, he's had his splashes with the Sixers that love, but he's been playing good basketball. And these are both guys that I hope can find some sort of place. So any thoughts on them?
Yeah, Braxton Key has been someone who's been really interesting to me. So last year he played with the Blue Coats in the run that they had in the bubble with Paul Reed and Rajon Tucker as their two-way guys. So Braxton's been consistent the past 2 years. I think last year he ran the 4 mostly with Paul Reed at the 5, and before Paul Reed came down this year, he was playing the 5 as well. When Paul Reed left, they put him back at the 5 again. So they obviously trust him. He's a guy that they think can play both the 4 and the 5 role. He's 6'8". He's a legit 6'8", and he's also big. Like the dude is yoked. All right, the dude is a big. He's a big dude, and so you like to see that in anybody. When someone has that kind of body, they are like a grown man, like kind of like we were talking about with Jaden Springer. You can usually find some sort of role for them, whether it's just being physical on the court or playing good defense or getting to the rim, all that kind of stuff. But something that has been the concern for him in past years and this year at times is the shooting. Just because he's not like particularly super athletic, like he can jump pretty well, but hasn't shown a lot of like agility, like when it comes to side movement, staying in front of perimeter guys, that's not always been his strong suit. His strong suit is around the rim. He's able to get up and block some shots at times. But he also at times this year has shown that he can shoot off the dribble at times and hit some catch and shoot threes. So it's like you said, it's another guy that's kind of hard to pinpoint right now. I wouldn't be shocked if he got a 10-day contract with a team, much like Charlie Brown did. But
Yeah.
I would also say that Charlie Brown, when he got his call up to the Mavericks, Charlie was put in a very specific role with the Blue Coats, and that was being a legitimate stretch 3, like 3-and-D type player. That was him. Braxton's kind of been moved around a little bit, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what he's going to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess one of the biggest takeaways overall is just how much talent this Blue Coats roster has and
Oh my
how
God.
fun they are to watch. These are all guys that I think have, I mean, obviously we hope the COVID cases settle down across the NBA and that things get under control. But if teams keep coming up shorthanded, these are all guys that I think are deserving of a chance. And I think plenty of teams are taking notice to this. So Blue Coats will be back from Vegas and get ready to take on the rest of the season. So you guys make sure to check that out. Justin, let everybody know, where can we find you? What are you doing? And fill us in.
Man, honestly, mostly Blue Coats and Sixers stuff. Last year I did a little bit of Eagles, but this year I'm kind of sticking with basketball. Got a new job, or graduated college, got a job, so or got a legit job. So I'm busy, but yeah. So Blue Coats stuff. I try to get down to as many home games as I can. Luckily, I've been able to get down to just about all of them. I know they have a game on the 28th, but that is a Tuesday at 1:00, so I will not be at that. But I will be at most of the games that are on the weekends. So if you can catch me there if you're ever at a Blue Coats game. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on the Twitter sphere when it comes to Blue Coats or Sixers, I'm always on there. So you can go follow me on Twitter at J_Persicketti. So try to spell that out for me. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, go follow me on there if you like. And also go check out the Painted Lines. It's our YouTube channel and a website and tons of stuff, especially from Chris Deibler, who is a madman. I know he's been on the Pick Swap pod before, and man, best dude you'll ever meet, honestly. Only reason I'm here doing what I'm doing is because of him. So it's a lot of fun. Also, go check out Austin Krell too. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. All those guys, Austin, Tiago, Chris.
I gotta say Tiago. Yes, Tiago. Tiago is amazing as well. All the co-hosts or whatever on our Sixers post-game show, Chris, Tiago, myself, we do a Sixers post-game show right after the buzzer, just about every game. Sometimes we're busy, but just about every game. And Tiago, best dude out there as well.
Yeah, there you go. So make sure you check it out. They're doing some great things over at the Painted Lines. Make sure you check out Justin. We'll tag him in the Twitter. And I appreciate all you guys for watching. As always, trust the process.
Thanks.